the need for a systemic approach to digitalization and data management. And one of the key solutions is clear systemic digitalization, data network, and high-quality processing of data, requiring systemic decision-making, easier access to data by medical professionals, and improved quality of healthcare for the people, because the development, the progress here results also savings and contributes to the resilience and response to the needs. So this conference is held under the honorary patronage of the President of Slovenia. So the first speech will be held by Mr. Staricha, President of Forum of International Research and Development Pharmaceutical Companies. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the traditional 10th conference, The Value of Innovation. And given the slogan of this year's conference, namely Digital Transformation for Informed Decision-Making in Healthcare, it is quite appropriate to greet you in this way, digitally. I am extremely proud that the International Forum of Research and Development Pharmaceutical Companies has organized this conference for so many years, bringing together the most important stakeholders in healthcare. I wish we could all meet offline, but unfortunately the circumstances do not allow to do that. But during the last year and a half, we have all got used to the benefits of digitalization, namely that we don't spend many hours in a car, that we can attend conferences in other countries without having to waste time traveling. And today we have a number of foreign guests here as well. So I am pleased that today the guests will present to us a number of examples of good practices, and that digitalization is giving new opportunities both in the field of managing diseases and in the field of addressing the challenges we are facing in the 21st century. Minutes count when an individual's life or death is at stake. Every piece of information is important that a doctor receives faster thanks to available databases. Every hour is important that a nurse can dedicate to treating patients rather than dealing with gathering information. And every day is important that innovative pharmaceutical companies may use developing new medications rather than dealing with red tape. And it's therefore right that we all come together at events such as today's so that we can exercise our mission. It is also good that we are proud of our successes, and during the global pandemic, we have developed in record time new vaccines, and we can. So welcome once again, and thank you all for taking time to participate in this conference. I would like to thank once again all the speakers, and I am sure that we will contribute through this conference to be more empowered and will carry our vocation easily. So that was Mr. Staricha. And now, Mr. Janez Poklukar, Minister of Health. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to be able to greet you today at the 10th strategic conference dedicated to an extremely topical subject, namely digital transformation in healthcare. Digitalization inevitably changes healthcare and brings in new technologies and innovation. So new medications are being introduced with high value added and such as biological, medicinal products, orphan drugs, and so on. At the same time, patients wish more and require better data on efficacy of medicinal products. And it is innovation that has contributed to the rapid development of vaccines, giving us a tool to exit the epidemic so that life can return to the normal. The objective of society as a whole should be to regain confidence in science and the cooperation of all stakeholders seeking synergies, listening to each other and learning from one another is the right way towards progress. And we wish you all a successful conference. Exchanging your views and opinions, working together is crucial for the digitalization of Slovenian healthcare, and that our citizens will benefit from even better health care. I wish you all once again a productive and successful conference. Thank you very much. So this conference is divided into 3 parts. In the first part, we'll focus mostly on digitalization as a backbone for best treatment outcomes. So the representatives of various European pharmaceutical companies, institutions, and so on, representatives of these institutions have prepared their speeches, and you will also listen to a very interesting Finnish example of best practice. So for systemic solutions, a high quality dialogue is essential, and later also the representatives of decision makers will introduce their contributions. So we start by Ms. Michael Strüben, Director of Digital Health at MedTech Europe. It is European Commercial Association of Medical Technologies, Medicinal Devices, and Digital Health.
Good morning, and thank you very much for the invitation and opportunity to speak with you today. I'd like to talk to you very, very quickly about medical technologies. These are technologies that are any technologies that can be used to save and improve lives of individuals suffering from a wide range of conditions. We distinguish between in vitro diagnostics and medical devices and digital health solutions. Our industry represents a 140 billion market in Europe. We employ about 760,000 employees. Our industry is dominated by small and medium-sized companies. 95% are SMEs. And we pride ourselves by being a very innovative sector as measured by the number of patent applications filed each year. For the purposes of today, I would like to talk to you about a recent report that we commissioned by Deloitte on the socioeconomic impact of AI in European health systems. For this report, we distinguish between 8 different categories of AI that already make an impact and a difference in medical technologies. Let's pick some of the most important examples. We think that one of the most important impacts will be made by, is already being made by wearables and devices that we wear on our body. For example, some devices can detect your movements and can predict fall events. We can also predict heart failures by measuring vital signs, and also prompt you to become more effective, do more exercise, and therefore improve lives and quality of lives. Another important area where AI is making an impact is in image recognition, image analysis and recognition. For example, there are powerful algorithms now that are self-learning and that can detect breast cancer. They can detect coronary artery diseases and other pathologies, and can do this with almost human precision. Overall, we calculated that AI in medical technologies can save 400,000 lives a year. We can have savings, we can realize savings of 200 billion euros every year. That represents more than 10% of the total European healthcare spend. And of course, AI can free 1.8 billion hours every year. That's the equivalent of hiring 500,000 additional full-time healthcare professionals. And of course, we're not talking here about replacing healthcare technologies, but by freeing them up to focus on more important issues like patient interactions, where humans will remain better than machines. There are a number of barriers to adoption of AI in healthcare that we identified. They relate to data, legal and regulatory challenges. There will also be important organizational and financial barriers to overcome. And of course, there will be social challenges. We need trust and skills. I'd like to focus for now on the two first ones, data and regulatory. Regarding data, we really have an opportunity coming up with the European Health Data Space, for which we expect legislation coming up next year, and which addresses many of the issues that we cited: data governance, some of the legal and technical barriers to exchange of information, the infrastructures, and also, of course, data quality and interoperability, because we need good quality interoperable data for training AI and for testing AI and for having it approved. One of the key concerns that we have as an industry is whether industry will have access to the data that is generated by the European Health Data Space. And the other thing, you have doubtlessly heard of the AI Act, the proposed AI Act that was released in April. And there we have concerns that the definition of AI is really a little bit too broad and can almost encompass any software in medical technologies. And of course, we noted in a recent position paper also the inconsistency with existing regulations, such as our medical device regulation, the IVDR, and also the GDPR. So we need appropriate regulations, that we're working with policymakers to make that happen. With that, I'd like to thank you. If you'd like to download the report, Google it, Socioeconomic Impact of AI, or download it. And if you're fast enough, you can scan the QR code. With that, thank you so much, and I'd like to close here. And I wish you a wonderful conference.
Next presentation is also recorded, namely how health data drives innovation. The author is Professor Deepak Kalra, President of the European Institute for Innovation through Health Data.
Deepak Kalra from the European Institute for Innovation through Health Data. I'd like to tell you about how health data is driving innovation. It's an exciting topic, and I hope that you will find it interesting. First of all, though, let's look at why. Our health systems are struggling. Of course, we all know as a result of the pandemic that public budgets are tight, and so health systems have to work hard to ensure that they can deliver the best possible care most efficiently. We don't really think that it is going to be feasible to continue to invest substantially in increasing public health budgets. But at the same time, we have a challenge from the population. We are all getting older, we're living longer, and we're collecting more and more chronic diseases, and that increases the burden we place as people on our health systems. In addition, I think everybody is aware of the inequalities that exist across the geographies within countries as well as between countries. So health systems are under pressure to improve the equity of access to health systems and so on. Now, we have to do more and be smarter if we're going to rise to those challenges. But I hope you will find that health data is actually helping us to do that already, and it can do even more. So let's take a look at this massive spectrum of opportunity from health data. First of all, let's focus on the individual level, the care we need to deliver to patients. Health data and digital health can help us much more to monitor the status of people with diseases when they're at home in the community, tracking how they are, noting and responding to escalations. Of course, multiple chronic diseases means different care teams have to work together and collaborate, and that means continuity of care is critically important. We want to follow evidence-based practices, which means clinical guidelines and care pathways need to be monitored as patients travel along them, and both the patients and clinicians need real-time feedback. We need our care to be more personalized, and we need it to be more preventive, to catch diseases before they strike and certainly stop them deteriorating. And so it's really important that we deliver digital and data benefits back to the individual patient, the individual clinician, but at the level of populations, which could be regions or nations, we need to do much more also to study what's happening to our patients as they travel through illness, as they experience healthcare. How can we ensure that we improve the quality of our healthcare providers, the performance of what they do, the safety of what they do, learning as people travel along care pathways, whether we can improve care pathways. There's a huge opportunity to use medical devices and algorithms, and you've heard about AI. We are excited about that, but we need to do much more to accelerate delivery. And although at the level of individuals where you'll use AI, we need to develop AI by studying populations. Pharmacovigilance, which is drug safety. I mean, I don't need to say much about public health surveillance and strategy, because through COVID, we've seen how absolutely essential it is to know what's happening in a COVID scenario and for health systems to respond appropriately. But at the level of bigger data, which might be countries or might be at a European level, we need to study diseases, we need to develop innovative treatments, innovative devices, algorithms, sensors. So really, I hope that you can feel the opportunity is huge. We have to do more. Now, it is an exciting landscape, and during one of our projects, Digital Health Europe, we were looking at how especially in Europe, different entities and initiatives starting to scale up that data opportunity. This is a splash screen of logos, and you may not know all the logos. It doesn't matter. The most important thing is that countries at an individual country level and European initiatives, many of them funded by the European Commission, are connecting the dots of data, helping us to join up data resources so we can run big data analyses. And mostly the model of that is what's called federated architectures. That means running queries across networks of data sources so that the queries and the responses get aggregated, rather than having to build massive skyscraper databases that have huge amounts of data in them, which give a lot more data protection anxieties to the public. So that's the model we're seeing. And even more excitedly now is the announcement in the last year or so from the European Commission about something called a European health data space. That is saying, can the European Commission help us to even join these dots together and give us a bigger scale still of data? Now, we don't yet have details of how the European health data space will be constructed, but this is a concept model that we've shared with the European Commission about how we think it's going to transpire, and we hope that we've got it roughly right. So what we have in practice is a series of networks already in existence, like the eHealth digital service infrastructure that allows patient summaries and prescriptions to travel across Europe. The regulators are putting in place the plans for a regulatory data source network called Darwin. Then there are rare disease platforms and registries already in existence connecting up data on patients with rare diseases. Then, of course, there are life sciences and national infrastructures. And all of these are forming federated networks, and we see perhaps the EHDS will be a federation of federations. But then there are players who are much more involved in kind of silos. So industry has a lot of data, clinical trials data, for example. Public health organizations and other rapid response organizations have data too, which is not yet in a federated environment, but could plug in. We see patients and citizens as being really exciting players in generating data from apps and wearables in the future, contributing to this space. And of course, the European health data space is one of a number of sectoral data spaces where there are others such as transport and the environment, which are health relevant. And so connecting to those other data spaces at a European level will enrich what we have. So we picture the European health data space as the most breathtaking opportunity yet of a bidirectional relationship, really helping to join the dots of the dots. Fascinating. But of course, we know, and we are working as a community to help the European Commission to make sure that this landscape is trusted with good governance, that data quality and interoperability are important, but also that the building blocks really enable these different networks to connect with each other in real time and deliver fast, big-scale data access. Now, when we are working with the European Commission, one of the channels of working with them is called the eHealth Stakeholder Group, and I'm privileged to be part of the eHealth Stakeholder Group. And just in recent weeks, we've been working as a working group to look at how can the European Commission and other stakeholders help to accelerate that scaling up. And I'd like to present to you the vision that we have come up with, just really presented, as you can see from the date, very recently to the European Commission. So this is hot stuff, but it is a high-level vision I accept. Firstly, that we really see the need for citizens and patients and healthcare providers to understand the importance of the data that they are using and the data they are creating for evidence generation as well as for continuity of care. It's really important that citizens have skills and tools, if they want to use them, to assess how their data is being used and to assert their preferences for how they want their data to be used by others. We need all stakeholders, and there's a long list on this bullet, to be motivated to contribute their data into this space. We don't want people to be holding on to data, either just because they don't have the technology to connect it or because they don't perceive the importance of sharing. But likewise, in the reverse direction, we need a wide range of players to have access to this data. Many, many people can contribute to our learning if we allow them to do it, but they've got to adhere to clear, ethical, and well-accepted criteria, and of course, comply with data protection regulations. Then it's important that we all use our learning to contribute to the European health data space in ways that I've mentioned. And we've also highlighted another important topic, slightly sideways, you might think, that the GDPR is interpreted and implemented in a harmonized way, because that does seem to be at the moment a bit of a barrier to this scaling up. Now, we've also developed a series of calls for actions. That's quite a few pages of detail. So I just want to highlight for you the 4 chapters of our calls to action. One is about improving the availability of robust health data. That means things like interoperability and data quality have to be handled at source. Improving data reuse conditions means making sure that the terms under which people share data, the requirements, the ethical principles are harmonized so everybody behaves well. Scaling up capability and capacity means educating everybody in how to make good, scientifically valid inferences from data, but also those architectures I've described to you. And public trust is absolutely essential without bringing the public on board. And that means giving them convincing and trustworthy evidence of how we are behaving ethically. Without that, we won't succeed at all. And that's something that our institute is very keen on. We work across stakeholders to help us all to collaborate and co-create the solutions that we need to capture and share better quality data, and also to use that data in trustworthy ways. Smarter healthcare and efficient research, that's what we all want. And I hope you feel motivated to roll up your sleeves and be part of that game. Help us all to have great healthcare in the future. Thank you very much.
To je bil torej dr. Deepak Kalra. Zdaj pa imamo, če se ne motim, že prvo možnost neposrednega vklopa, in sicer v Bruselj, kjer upam, da je z nami gospa Natalie Moll, generalna direktorica Evropske zveze farmacevtskih industrij in združenj, EFPIA. Ms. Moll, can you hear us?
Can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Well, we can see you, so that's our privilege. And I think we can also hear you. So great. If you're ready, then rock and roll.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the invitation. I'm really delighted to be here. Thank you also to our association, PharmaForum, for the invitation. As you mentioned, I represent EFPIA, the European Federation of Pharma Industries and Associations, and about 2,000 R&D companies of all sizes across Europe. It was really insightful to listen to Deepak speaking just now, because together with organizations like his, we're really working to accelerate the delivery of innovation that matters. And in this sense, data sharing and data usage will really improve our ability to do that. It will improve health outcomes and the quality of life. It will allow this sort of shift from a health system that is centered on providers, us, and doctors and hospitals, of course, and to one that is centered on people's individuals' needs. And we really think that data in that sense can be an enabler of patient empowerment and promoting shared decision-making, as was just mentioned now by Deepak. What we think really data and data platforms need to enable are three aspects: patients and doctors to better manage the diseases, so providers; healthcare systems to better manage resources, so really to optimize the kind of interventions that we use; and researchers to accelerate the research and make it more patient relevant by having the feedback loop in terms of outcomes. And we're really pleased to see the European health data space ambition, because we think that it will really enable the access to data for all those in public and private sectors who need to make decisions on this basis, but also to reuse secondary data in compliance with GDPR. And we just heard how important that is to make sure that we follow the fantastic rules we have here at European level. But also the European health data space should also enable effective operations for our companies, so that we can operate as research divisions located all over the world, but connected very closely. And it should also provide safe spaces, as is mentioned in the pharmaceutical strategy of the European Commission, the sandbox concept, for collaboration between public and private sectors to build confidence and facilitate the use of new technologies and new sources of evidence decision-making. As was mentioned just before me by Deepak, we've really piloted a lot of things in various projects during the Innovative Medicines Initiative, public-private partnership we have between industry and the Commission, and before that also through Horizon programs. And now it's time to scale up. Now it's time to deploy for Europe and its citizens to take advantage of this digitization. And we saw during COVID how incredibly important and how impactful it is to have the right level of digitization. The first, maybe the biggest learning is really this real world data, the importance of being able to collect it and communicate it as quickly and effectively as possible. We saw it during COVID, whether it's clinical notes, whether it's e-health records, registries, continuous patient monitoring. These are all incredibly valuable tools that can strengthen care conditions and service integration. They can improve the empowerment and self-management for patients through access to their own health data. They can also give patients the ability to take responsibility for managing their own health and achieving their life goals, which is also important as shared objective, and open the door to remote disease management by healthcare professionals and to greater disease self-management, which was also important during this pandemic when we weren't allowed anymore to frequent maybe hospitals or doctors as easy as you had before. And now I think even more exciting with the advent of big data and artificial intelligence tools, the potential for major research insights using real-world data is really significant. And shifting from a model focused on clinical outcomes to a more holistic approach, which takes into account the real needs of people, should be a priority. And we think that we have an opportunity now. Of course, there are some challenges. There are always challenges where there are opportunities and vice versa. Apps and devices may have differing standards and definitions, and the resulting data may be stored in different ways, and we need to standardize and consistently validate against clinical standards. So this is all a learning by doing a little bit. At the moment, there may be poor reliability and difficult comparability with other data sources. And we'll also notice a lack of consistent legal approaches to sharing data. And this really leads me to the next part, which is legislation and public trust. The challenges for those involved in the use of real-world data for scientific research is to develop and deliver privacy-compliant solutions across complex data supply chains. So to encourage individuals to share their personal data, they have to first be guaranteed transparency regarding their data, how their data is used, and some measure of direct control and protection of their privacy rights. And they also need to be confident that sharing their personal data is safe, secure, and will not reveal their identities. So it's really important that we collaborate to help people understand the potential benefits for the individual and for society as a whole of sharing data. It will be important to demonstrate that the insights generated is of benefit across the health sector. And then if individuals at that point are comfortable or confident that their data is safe, and that they can control the data that they share while seeing the benefits in the end, I think they'll be much more likely to share more data. Having said that, data must be of high quality and usable for the primary and secondary research, and access to high quality data and the ability to generate insights from the data is a really critical step towards personalized healthcare and improving patient treatments and outcomes. So hopefully we see how that better access to data will really pave the way for this more holistic treatment with higher efficacy, leading to better care, and also a reduced waste of resources, because we'll be able to tailor to optimize the different steps in the pathways. We know that healthcare is one of the most regulated, rightly so, industries and environments possible. We have strict rules related to data sharing and evidence-based decision-making. And as an industry, as Deepak mentioned, we have extensive experience of sharing data with the public sector, just to have our medicines approved. And our members are required by legislation to provide extensive details of the new medicines to the medicines regulator and report adverse events after medicines are made available to the public. So it's a continuous, if you like, exchange of data, collection of data. And through official policy initiatives taken by the industry, such as our commitment to the clinical trial transparency and the process of scientific publication, much of these data are made available to other economic players also, and to the public sector. So we are indeed a resource of data, as Deepak very clearly said. And in the pharma sector, access to public sector data, such as the data health and health systems, is critical to innovation, and is quite, I would even say, extremely difficult at the moment due to the legal fragmentation and uncertainty. We really have a perspective on the future where there is increased data sharing between the industry and the public sector in order to support data-driven innovation and healthcare delivery. We're not there yet, but we would like to emphasize the role of codes of conduct for the sector that would harmonize the rules across Europe, ensuring equal rights to citizens between countries. And then the users of the future European health data system should be encouraged to develop self-regulatory frameworks for the use of data, identifying the safeguards that should be deployed to minimize harm to subjects according to the area they need the data for. Finally, I think very importantly, the adoption of standardized outcomes, reduced fragmentation in registry data, and the integration of new technologies will really improve care. and is I think the last step in delivering outcome-based healthcare systems that will be, first of all, extremely beneficial for patients because it's patient-centered, but also for the sustainability of healthcare systems, because we will optimize the delivery, we will optimize the resource expenditure, we will really create a positive, virtuous circle. But for this, we see still some steps to be taken, notably by the European Commission. We really think the Commission should now develop a policy framework that promotes outcomes-based healthcare. That would really help to connect all the different initiatives and make sure that we stay very patient-centered. I think it would also be important that they support a scaling up of digital services, infrastructures across member states through the development and deployment of the European Health Data Space. There are different elements, of course, of the European Health Data Space, but there are things that need to be at the same level in every member state, and if the Commission can have a hand in scaling up these digital service infrastructures, that would be extremely important to enable. And then what is always great is sharing best practices. So I think champion success stories in the implementation of registries so that different countries, different regions can learn from each other is also a crucial role that the European Commission can take. And not forgetting, of course, EU funding support across Europe. I think any policy that the European Commission and member states were to agree on should really facilitate data sharing and harmonized applicable rules to remove any barriers for the collective benefit across Europe. Each of us as stakeholders have a lot of experience in this, in things that went well and things that went not so well, in the barriers that we experience. And I think we really stand ready, just as mentioned before me, to help collaborate, achieve anything that we can do for Europe to become a true world leader in life sciences and unlock the potential of data and digital. And I thank you really very much for organizing this important session at this particular time. And we look forward to continuing to work with everybody on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Moll. And good recovery. I see that your left hand is somehow injured, but anyway. So thank you very much, and good luck to Brussels. Natalie Molky.
This was Natalie Moll, who got an award last year, one of the 20 most influential women impacting the policies. She also mentioned the exchange of best practices, and this will also be part of the next presentation by Minna Hendolin, leading specialist in Sitra's Health Data 2030 project. Finland is the role model in the EU. What is their secret in managing COVID? They have their social distancing in their blood already prior to the outbreak. They love drinking coffee, which is waiting for you in half an hour, and they love literature. Their education system is top level. Now let us listen to Mrs. Hendolin and the way they tackled the innovative utilization of health.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's my great pleasure and honor to be here in this wonderful event. A need for radical redesign, how we deliver, practice, and think about healthcare is emerging across the world. Healthcare systems are under pressure in the face of emerging demographics and rising costs. As we have evidenced during COVID-19 pandemic, the world is facing bigger challenges that are socially complex, are often difficult to define. Further, there's not always a clear solutions, nor they are really responsibility of one stakeholder or even a nation. To ensure sustainable and resilient healthcare, we need to develop common guidelines and a solid legal base for cross-border sharing and use of data in Europe. Finland is at the forefront of this digital leap, where personalized, time and place-independent digital services and knowledge-based smart solutions are created in innovation ecosystems in close public-private collaboration and brought for the benefit of citizens and to ensure healthy living. In this session, I will shortly describe the Finland's journey to be one of the forerunners in digital health and the usage of data. And I will also introduce some of the European initiatives and some concrete lessons learned from this journey. But let's first look a little bit of background of Finland and some facts and figures. So Finland is a small, remote country at the top left corner of Europe. It is pretty small and remote, and it has only 5.5 million people. During the last 100 years, Finland has developed from a poor agricultural country to the highly educated and technologically advanced society. Finland ranks among one of the most advanced economies in the world and has been on the top places of several global comparisons and on competitiveness, innovation capabilities, business environment, and even happiness. A recent example is the Finland's ranking in the first place in the European Personalized Health Index that was generated by Roche Future Proofing Healthcare Initiative. The initiative that accelerates and supports the future evolution of healthcare by tracking and measuring progress towards more sustainable, personalized, integrated, and digital health system. This initiative was set up 2 years ago, and the index was independently driven by experts across Europe. The index provided much needed input into the discussion around data-enabled healthcare systems and highlighted country by country what policies and practices are working well and where there are improvements and needed to be done. This index also showed in a very concrete way how much countries differ in their maturity to adapt digital and personalized medicine approaches and the usage of data. But it also showed, like for the Finland, that even though that we were in the top of the index, we still need to develop, for instance, our performance in the integration of health products and technologies. Finland's strengths were based on this pragmatic development of the healthcare IT systems and the digitalization of data. One of the important things behind the story of Finland to develop to be a pioneer in this area was 2014 when the Finland launched its health sector growth strategy. This strategy was very wide and important in terms that it was signed with the 3 different ministries: Ministry of Social and Health, Ministry of Employment Economy, and Ministry of Education and Culture, having together 2 important government organizations, the Business Finland and Academy of Finland, as the funding agencies. The strategy was also quite holistic. So it aimed that Finland is an internationally known pioneer country for not only for research and innovations and development, but also for investments and new businesses in the health sector. There is a number of key actions that were identified, and the roadmap was updated 3 times, and the whole strategy has lasted during 3 different governments. Important things that were identified, that we need to develop innovation-friendly society and the environment, the policies and regulations, and also the highlighting the utilization of data for secondary use of purposes. So for the purposes for research, innovations, and policy making. Another important thing was that we had to build on our own assets. Finland is a small country. We don't have so much of resources, and also the capabilities are in a certain terms limited. But we identified that our assets are based on the data, the long-term commitment to build national registers, biobanks, genome data, but also that in Finland we have our health data registers and and health data and overall in the national systems are in the digital format. And also that we have had a long commitment and capabilities in building the ICT competencies during their history, and very viable and booming startup environment and ecosystem. So Finland has been investing a lot in the past to their healthcare service system, where the public and private organizations are collaborating a lot, and then also investing to their research and development. Those are the cornerstones of the Finnish health ecosystem. And also as a part of the strategy, Finland has built these research platforms among the biobanks, but also some thematic national research centers and expertise centers, like in the drug development, cancer center, and neuro center. But the very important part is the booming and multi-sectoral business ecosystem, the companies around it. And it's not only the health tech, traditional health tech companies, but is this the ICT companies, technology companies, which are developing, for instance, these advanced technologies and data platforms. And then a couple of concrete examples that what are those critical things, that how we can store and manage the data. That was one of the questions. How can we get access and use to the data? And how we build this innovation-friendly innovation and business environment. Backbone for the data in Finland and this data health ecosystem has been the national Kanta service. It is a patient social care and healthcare service repository and kind of data bank. It's a nationwide, where the healthcare professionals can have access, the private and public ones, to the needed data, and they can store the patient records and make prescriptions. But important thing is that the citizens also can browse their own medical records and order and repeat prescriptions. And there is also in development this called MyKanta, the patient portal, where you can also in the future add your own data to the whole system. And so the Kanta is not just a rigid data repository, it's also a service platform. And this has been a very important part of the whole infrastructure. But it's only a part of the health data infrastructure in Finland. There are these nation-level data lakes and then also regional data lakes, which are interconnected with this interface. And it's very important, has been to build this connectivity and the integration of this data, but also the services. Another important part in the journey of building this enabling environment was the data legislation or the secondary use of health data that was given 2019. This was the first in kind in the world. And it ensures authorities, institutes, and also companies to have an access to the public healthcare and social data in Finland. This provides efficient and secure procedures to utilize the data, not only for research and development, but for innovation activities and education and knowledge-based studies and like a policy preparations. An important part of the legislation was also that it stated that in Finland, we will establish the FinData as data permit authority and service operator, a kind of a one-stop shop for organizations to gather access to the data, to give the permits to the data, and also to build this secure environment where the data can be approached and managed and studied. And also this FinData collects the data. So it's this kind of a full service house. And this has been now up and running for a couple of years. And all these developments and good practices that have been now got in Finland related to this secondary use of data legislation and the ramping up of FinData operations are now being used as a part of their examples in building this European health data space from other countries as well. And then let's jump a bit higher to the European level. So there are a lot of developments also in Europe, since the European Commission has recognized the importance of digitization and taken actions now to secure Europe's competitiveness and data sovereignty. 2020, the Commission launched the European Data Strategy that aims to create easier and secure access and usage of data and to develop a single market around that. The first action of European strategy was the proposal of Data Governance Act that addresses the data held by public sector. An overarching perspective of the DGA is to stimulate the data-driven development to foster open data for business, innovation, and policy-making purposes. And as we can see, the data strategy and it covers different domains. And the health data is a very important part of this European data strategy. And the special initiative called European Health Data Space is now a collection of actions in the coming years to boost especially the digital transformation and data usage within the health sector, and to build the future for better policy, better healthcare for citizens, and better environment for research and innovation. One of the concrete actions of that European Health Data Space is the joint actions toward the European Health Data Space. And it is to help the member states and the European Commission in developing concepts and guidelines for the governance and usage and sharing of health data for the secondary purposes. This is a 3-year project that started in February 2021. And data is carried out by the 25 European countries and coordinated by Finnish Innovation Fund Sitra, my whole organization. And it will develop the governance models now and exchange the secondary use of health data between now the European countries. The vision of data is that in the future, Europe, citizens, communities, and companies benefit from the seamless and secure access to protected and high-quality health data, regardless where it is stored. So, what have we learned now during all these years in Finland, and then also in this European context? If we now kind of close the circle and where we started from this European ranking that this ROS Future Proofing Initiative had made. And Slovenia was in the kind of middle class of the whole ranking. And it performed pretty well in the policy issues and especially some ethical issues and partnerships. But where it needs to improve is definitely in the IT infrastructure and the usage and access to the data. And the very cornerstone of the whole thing is that if the data is not in a digital format, in the good quality, there is not much use for the data. And that's why we have to start from the very basic things. So some lessons learned, especially from Finland perspective. First of all, there is a huge difference in European countries, as we have seen, in the maturity to develop this data-driven healthcare and also to adopt digital and personal health solutions, like we have experienced in Finland. So there are diversity in the strategic level, vision level, policy level, infrastructure, capacity building, digital maturity and digital literacy of people and organizations. Important is also that no country is perfect, and we have to improve and develop. We have to have this continuous development and also share the knowledge, good examples and understanding. Health is not a desert island, so we need to have these basic building blocks in the whole society in the place. So it is about the trust, security, about education in general, and also the social and healthcare and the infrastructure. We definitely need a long-term government backing, and especially what we have realized in Finland, that we need cross-ministerial and organizationally wide collaboration with commitments in high enough, since we can't really make a big changes just from the traditional healthcare sector. We need open communication and collaboration with ecosystem stakeholders. So, for instance, companies are very important to be a part of their whole journey and not only in taking actions, but also in planning and the strategy work. Small countries like Finland and also like Slovenia, we have to tap into the world's best research, innovation, and business ecosystems, and also influence there, not just to follow on the side, but that is why, like Finland and Sitra is taking a more kind of a wider role and more kind of higher role in the European data policies. And then also the things take time. If you think about Finland, 100 years after our independence, and then gradually building the whole society and then making legislation and policies, and same time ramping up the capabilities of the whole society. So you need to be a patient and that but also some comfort and that these things take time. And in the end, it's all about people. And we are doing these things for the benefit of citizens and benefit of people. And people are active partners. You can't let them away around beyond the things. So they have to be taken into part. So it's a public, private, and people collaboration. So thank you for this opportunity, and I wish you a wonderful conference.
So that was Dr. Minna Hendulin, Doctor of Biochemistry from Finland. I've seen that you tried to photograph the slides, but you're too late, but I'm sure that the organizers will provide you the slides in a digital format afterwards, so you'll get the slides afterwards. So the organizers have also asked me that during the conference you wear face masks. Of course, the speakers don't have to wear face masks when speaking. So now, until the coffee break, we'll listen to 3 direct presentations of the representatives of Slovenian institutions. First, we'll listen to the aspect of the Ministry of Health, and I invite Mr. Bogdan Tušar to take the floor, namely Acting Director General of the Directorate for Health System Development at the Ministry of Health. Please, the floor is yours. I apologize because I'll be in an analog format and not in a digital one. First, good afternoon to all the participants and the organizers. Of course, I would like to thank for the invitation, and I'm pleased that we can talk about the plans of the ministry in the field of digitization. Our minister initially mentioned that the COVID-19 pandemic changed the perspectives of healthcare, and it actually what happened is that the solutions in e-health have resulted in a tripling of the application, and I'm sure that now we have a good opportunity to further develop all the solutions. The minister also mentioned that digitalization is one of the most important areas, and we have set up a new department dealing with legislation, long-time care, also is one of the important aspects to be addressed, and digitalization, of course. So our directorate will be the one that will be key and will coordinate the activities in the development of digitized solutions in healthcare, including the key stakeholders such as Public Health Institute and Health Insurance Institute. The plans are ambitious, and if we look back to the past, so the first steps in digitization in healthcare started in 2005, followed by a boom when e-health solutions were also comprised e-ordering and others, but we have never had a long-term strategy, what to develop, in what way, and what resources to use. So we have set up a working group, and with the help of the European Commission, we are developing a new digitalization strategy for the next 10 years in Slovenia. It is important that these ideas and proposals will be dealt with by all the key stakeholders, the patients, providers, and all of the main institutions. We will also have to meet the commitments from the recovery and resilience plan, namely how to spend 83 million euros on digitalized solutions, and 12 projects have been identified to be implemented in the next 6 years. Additional 5 projects have been imposed by the Strategic Council for Digitalization. I don't have enough time to mention all of the key areas. So telemedicine, medicine. The wish of the ministry is to seek solutions to be able to be implemented at the national level, and digital solutions that will result in benefits for patients, healthcare providers, and decision makers in healthcare, so the ministry and others. And in this way, we really wish the solutions to be implemented at the state level, covering all areas from primary, secondary, and tertiary sector. Then healthcare for the elderly. This is a very important area and has been developed through pilot projects and through long-term healthcare. Now, the objective of digitalization in healthcare is to actually get to a single health single health file and central diagnostics, a single data model, robotized preparation and storage of medicine, then some others that are key projects that we wish to address at the Ministry industry in the next 5 years. We see this as an important challenge because while developing the solutions, we will also have to face the problems. And in the past, the investments weren't sufficient in digitalization in the past. Only 1% of the expenditure is allocated to that. Then staff issues and also the readiness of everybody to move things forward and design things better than they are today. So much from me. The plans are optimistic at our ministry, and we hope we'll have enough time to materialize them all in order to improve the benefits for the people. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. The term digitization is closely linked to the use of data. Let us continue use of data, the foundation for achieving the best treatment outcomes, the perspective of the National Institute for Public Health. This will be presented by Mrs. Mitka Zaletil, Head of Health Data Center at the National Institute of Public Health of Slovenia. Thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation on behalf of the National Institute of Public Health. Prior to the pandemic, Slovenia collected a lot of health data and used them for secondary purposes. Compared to other countries, we have very open data. So this is provided at the portal, municipal platform, so our data is well accessible. And this has also been confirmed by the review performed by the World Health Organization prior to the pandemic at the end of 2019 and the beginning of 2020. They assessed the situation in Slovenia and concluded that the data is well accessible, but we do have problems with the constant financing of data and the legislation that is rather rigid and obsolete. One of important challenges in Slovene healthcare system is that we collect similar data for different purposes. Our institute collects data for the purpose of managing the system. The Health Insurance Institute and other insurance companies collect data for the calculations. And the data are similar but collected for different purposes and collected on the basis of different methodologies employed. If I focus on the public health purpose, I can say that we have 5 pillars of health data. The first pillar being constant data in line with legislation. 2, national research and service, an important source of data. As Mrs. Henolin said, health and health data is not an isolated island, so we combine them with various social and demographic data. The 4th pillar combines obtained collections, because we are not only interested in hospitalization or one type of disease, but we are also interested in other factors affecting the situation. And the last but not least, what I should mention first, e-health collections that can also be used for statistical purposes as well as public health purposes. The secondary use mentioned at the beginning has two levels. First level, the data obtained during treatment can be used for secondary purposes for public healthcare purposes. So we do not prepare data in isolation or later on. At the second level, this public data is used for scientific, statistical, and research purposes as well as other purposes. And this is where we talk about researchers from various faculties. And our institute has well-established and long cooperation with researchers, so they often turn to us to obtain data. The data is provided to researchers free of charge, while in Finland the data is quite expensive, I may say. How to proceed? What development can we expect in public health care and in the field of secondary use of the data in the future? We are aware of best practices of secondary use. FinData was presented. Something similar exists in Belgium and in France. And there is a lot of maneuvering space for potential improvements. We should also set up a data hub where researchers could access the data in a more transparent way, not only through our institute. This would also provide the overview of data collection by several organizations. Quality and interoperability of data are crucial. Mr. Tushar mentioned a single data model. This is something we've been working on for a couple of years. Sometimes we have our ups and downs, but we are on a good path, joining key institutions, the Health Ministry, Health Insurance Institute, and our institute, Public Health Institute. So we collect data once for several purposes. For example, the data on injuries at work, on sick leave, and so on. Slovenia has been active within various joint measures, joint actions. TechDAS was mentioned by the Finnish colleague. We are very active. In September next year, we expect the so-called country visit. A representative of TechDAS will come to Slovenia, and they will assess the readiness of Slovenia to European health data space. I myself cooperate with other member states. All partner states within this project will be assessed. I'm talking about the TechDAS project, so that we will obtain the joint assessment of the preparedness of member states for this European health data space. Let me conclude by saying that Slovenia can be proud of its achievement at the international as well as national level. Let me only mention the central data register, patient data register. This is something similar to the Finnish Kanta. Our register developed well also during the COVID crisis. Thank you very much.
Thank you. By the way, in Finnish, kanta doesn't mean kanta, but opinion. So kanta in Slovenian is a waste bin. Now the aspect of the Health Insurance Institute of Slovenia, and I would ask Ms. Bolka, Director of Field for Development and Analysis, to take the floor. So, good afternoon. It's difficult to add anything new or innovative to what we have already heard, but the Health Insurance Institute of Slovenia is the institution covering most of the health expenditure. And our institute has collected a lot of information. Since 2013, we have all the data on services in a structured format. So we talk about 2,100,000 people, 1 million recipes, prescriptions, and 6 million on the secondary level, 35,000 hospitalizations, 35,000 decisions on hospital treatment. So great quantities of very structured data, and this provides a basis for planning, for predictions, for the use of the data for decision making, and for the future, as best as possible, allocation of very limited funds. So in the data collection, use of data and digitalization in the broadest sense, we also face many other challenges. There are many possibilities for improvement in healthcare providers. For example, we need to collect in a more detailed manner the costs of healthcare of patients, and then also the data needs to be more integrated, and as mentioned already, the Public Health Institute collects certain data, and also how to integrate data from various sources to use such data for good predictions of medical conditions, as well as to ensure as best as possible allocation of funds. We know that the population has been aging, and the funds which are limited, there is also always a struggle who will be stronger as far as the allocation of funds is concerned, so that we'll have sufficient funds also tomorrow when we'll be older, and that all the services will be provided. We also know that the working population has been decreasing, and it will be very difficult to coordinate all these areas. Maybe a question: how to ensure the development activities, to how to make sure that the innovation takes place, that it will be tested. I think that at the national level, the key institutions should take a step forward as regards the normalization of this environment. Today, we don't know always how to finance a specific project, from what sources, because these development news, these pilot projects are crucial crucial to test what is possible and what is not, what models to be used, to what good practices can be transferred to Slovenia. But what we need is a stable environment, development environment, so that we can test everything. So this use of data for the target area, financially sustainable and efficient system is crucial to ensure access to each individual in Slovenia who has paid in this system. Thank you.
Thus, we have come to the end of the first section. In the continuation, we'll discuss innovation and breakthroughs with examples of breakthrough therapies that will enable the treatment of diseases not possible today, and the examples where the technology can be used in routines using IT solutions. Three exceptionally interesting lecturers, the first one being Professor Dr. Roman Jerala from the Institute of Chemistry from Ljubljana, head of the Department of Synthetic Biology and Immunology. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. I would like to thank the organizers to present our institute and our research.
So today I would like to present some innovative research that is done at National Institute of Chemistry. And first, so my presentation will just present our institute, and then I will showcase three of the technologies in brief time, sort of vignettes, and then end with the vision that we have in this area. So our institute has three main missions. The first one is to expand knowledge in the area of chemistry and related disciplines, which of course also involves, strongly involves life sciences, then to transfer the knowledge. And the third one is to translate those discoveries into applications, also with collaboration with the industry. As you can see from the numbers, our institute is relatively small, but I would say it's sufficient enough to have the critical mass, yet it's small enough to be agile to respond to the challenges of modern science. So one of the important pillars of our institute is up-to-date equipment. So we have a strong, very good national NMR facility, also in the area of electron microscopy. I would say we're probably top in Slovenia, including the atomic resolution microscopy, mainly for materials, cryo-electron microscopy. We also have the computational center and also instruments to determine the size of molecules. Animal facility, which is in the academic area, I think among the best in Slovenia. And we have 4 departments that are connected with life sciences. 2 of them are more directly, and others like theory department and NMR centers are also contributing strongly to this. And I think all of those areas contribute with top-level scientific results. Our institute is publicly funded, so we obtain most of the funding from competitive grants, mainly from National Slovenian Research Agency, but also we are strongly involved in European framework networks programs. We're particularly proud of our 6 ERC projects, 3 for the advanced researchers, 1 for starting, and 2 for the proof of concept projects. And our institute has a long tradition of collaborations with the industry, particularly pharmaceutical, which includes our national producers, so Krka, Lek, that is now within Sandoz and Novartis, but also Janssen and others. So, as I mentioned, I would like to present to you 3 of the examples of research results in the area of that are potentially important for biomedicine. So the first is the result within a European consortium in the area of few and emerging technologies that is led by a group at the Technical University of Munich with collaborators also from Denmark and Slovenia. So the idea is to develop new types of antiviral therapies, namely aimed at encapsulating the viruses by designed nano shells, which are made from either polypeptides or from materials. And we already have, although the project only has been running for a year and a half, quite interesting results, mainly from Henrik Ditz's group. Namely, you're probably familiar with the approach of DNA nanotechnology, where we can repurpose DNA for completely different purposes to design almost any shape that we want. So they can then make this type of triangles that can be then packed into cages of different size, depending on stoichiometry, and the size span from, let's say, 50 to hundreds of nanometers, which means that we can adapt them for viruses of different size. But of course, viruses cannot enter the full cage, so we need to have some part of the cage open, which allows the entry of the viruses, and we functionalize those DNA cages, which nanobodies or aptamers or peptides for viruses. Then we can see that we can indeed capture viruses inside the cage, which we demonstrated on a couple of viruses like hepatitis B virus or chikungunya or adeno-associated viruses. And here we can see that there is some sort of flexibility upon encapsulating the virus, and we also demonstrated that this type of approach is indeed working to neutralize viruses better than just the antibodies. So the second approach is really to use synthetic biology tools to develop new tools to guide the future of gene and cell therapy. In this way, the devices, the DNA that it's inserted into cells is able to sense the conditions within the cells to respond to external stimuli to produce selected therapeutic proteins or regulate some gene modifications. So one example is to use DNA-designed DNA binding domains, which can be directed against any selected human gene to combine 2 different conditions. So implementing in this way an OR logic function, which can be then combined with other into more complex networks to design, in this case, XOR logic functions, which means that we can combine, analyze the presence of 2 different conditions to increase the specificity for certain conditions, let's say for cancer, or to respond to external signals. And this can be then used to implement all in principle, digital Boolean logic functions in mammalian cells, which we demonstrated in this case, where we required only 3 different designed DNA binding domains. But as I said, they can be designed against tens of thousands of human genes. So this type of control is excellent, but has one small disadvantage, that its response is relatively slow. It takes hours to respond. And cells in the nature have used other types of faster responses. One of them is to respond by modification of proteins that are already synthesized in the cell, which means that when the proteins encounter the signal, they can be rapidly modified and the response can be much faster than this traditional type of response based on transcription regulation. So this idea is the following. So in our implementation, we have designed split proteases that can be regulated by small molecules such as rapamycin, abscisic acid, hormones, or in principle anything almost that you can have. And this protease is then able to cleave this target protein and reconstitute the activity of a selected protein. In this case, we used reporter, but we can also activate other proteases or basically any selected protein function. So in this case, again, we can combine signals to obtain different types of combinations of signals depending on the properties that we want to inquire. But most important is that this approach enables us faster response to signals. Namely, if we compare it with transcriptional regulation that is, as I mentioned, used traditionally, here the response requires several hours, while in our case, we blow off the segment, we see that the response is obtained already after a couple of minutes. And this is in living human cells with a chemical signal that has to enter the cells to trigger a response. In my last example, I would like to present our proof of concept ERC project, which is aimed to modify the very known CRISPR method, which is used to inactivate or modify genes. So in our implementation, we coupled this Cas9 key CRISPR enzyme with exonuclease. Namely, whenever you cut the DNA, it triggers activation of endogenous repair system, which again repairs the system, and this can then go on and on in several cycles, unless there is an exonuclease that blocks this cycle and triggers inactivation of selected gene. So in our case, we show that this approach is indeed much more potent. Namely, we can much stronger activate or inactivate the selected genes, which was demonstrated on 3 different genes in the human genome. But more importantly, we can use it also to use it for anti-cancer therapy. Cancer, as you probably well know, is also characterized by some specific translocations, such as an example of Philadelphia chromosome, which is characteristic for the chronic myeloid leukemia, and we can target this Cas with exonuclease specifically against this translocation, which decreases the viability of cancer cells, which was also demonstrated in an animal model, which showed strong decrease of the size of the tumor and also longer survival of animals. So to end with the vision that we have, we think that synthetic biology really offers very potent possibilities for support and design of gene and cell therapies, and we think that small agile research group at institutes have really the opportunity. Now this does not necessarily require billions of euros, but we can also introduce some breakthrough innovations through small groups with an excellent ideas. And in collaboration with clinicians at our National University Clinical Center, we're really very motivated to move forward towards applications to our patients. And we are trying to establish the Center for Technologies for Gene and Cell Therapy in Slovenia, particularly with focus on neurological rare diseases and cancer immunotherapy. And of course, this work was done by our great collaborators and with a great international partnership. Thank you very much.
Najlepša hvala, gospod profesor.
Thank you, Professor. The next speaker is Professor Dr. Borut Štrukelj, head of the Department of Pharmaceutical Biology and the Faculty of Pharmacy at the University of Ljubljana. He will talk about the future of RNA technology. Please, the floor is yours. Good afternoon, and I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me. I am very pleased. So I removed the face mask, even though we know that masks save lives. So a friend of mine walked a few days ago with his face mask on, with his lover, and his wife went by and didn't recognize him. So you can see how face masks can save lives. So we have not much time to enter the world of RNA. Some 20 years ago, we believed that genome is what is the center, and RNA are transfers in order to get to proteins in each of our cells. DNA is an external disk activated when it is needed. So everything is based on the regulation, and everything is based on RNA molecules. You may remember that 28 years ago we said we had 3 types of RNA molecules, so information, ribosomal, and transfer RNA, bringing the right amino acid to the right place, and this is how our proteins are formed. So this is something totally new. In 2021, we have at least 11 new RNAs that in themselves constitute new medicinal agents. I've been lectured this for 20 years, and they keep saying that this is actually science fiction. Yeah. What shocks me is always when they show me how many minutes I still have. You can see there are so many new, all these molecules that are all targets. We can change them and activate them also with the patient little Chris, who went to the US to be treated, and now he can walk. So what we can do? Prevent the protein to be created that causes a disease and chronic disease. So how we do it? Through the counterbodies, we can reduce the course of the disease. We have 2 basic mechanisms, gene silencing and RNA interference, and in the Nobel Prize was awarded to 2 scientists for RNA interference. Now we have some new molecules and cures here preventing that in hepatocytes non-connection or LDN cholesterol as a cluster is prevented there, so poor cholesterol is developed, and if we prevent an enzyme or protein to be created in this way, we can actually achieve that the enzyme is degraded. So RNA is curative, and 2 probes per year are efficient. So I've mentioned cytokines and other molecules on cancer cells, which are excessive proteins, actually allowing such cells to grow. So I won't go into all the details. So the cell panics when this virus, double-stranded virus, enters, and also interleukin 23, and the state or the condition improves. Then we also have the technology, namely we prevent the protein to be formed in psoriasis. We have the cures available on the market, and it prevents the protein and your poor cholesterol is a cluster of 3,000 molecules, and if there is no this protein there, also the cholesterol decreases. So you can see how many extracellular and intracellular elements are available. So we have two vaccines on the basis of the information RNA, and we are waiting for the third one. So the information RNA is brought into the cell, and what results is a spike protein. It is safe and it is identified by our immune system. Counter antibodies are created, and on this basis, onco vaccines. So BioNTech, for example, uses onco vaccines. So if I conclude, we know that this is a new world. So like 20 or 30 years ago, we got to know the biological drugs. The same will happen with RNA and DNA cures. So the only question is who will pay for them. So hopefully we'll be able to develop more specific, more efficient potential new molecules who will mimic the cells in our bodies. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Štrukelj. We are ticking off the time. I wish you a successful government conference. So this is not science fiction, but fantastic science. Now let me invite Dr. Izidor Mlakar from the Faculty of Electrical Engineering and Computer Science, University of Maribor, and Maribor University Medical Center. Izidor Mlakar also brought a guest. More will be presented. I will present another aspect of artificial intelligence and robotics. Focuses more on patients, the key element of our health, namely how to improve the quality care of patients given the lack of staff. Frida Pepper is our commercial name of the humanoid robot. Pepper is engaged into an EU project where the vision is to design open integration platform where different aspects of artificial intelligence can be tested. We were supported by the Faculty of Arts, the Department of Psychology, and the University Clinical Hospital in Maribor. We will try to assess how this robot can be embedded, placed into hospital environment, which is very dynamic and sensitive. There will be 2 clinical studies. We'll use the robot to contribute to better decisions taken in the clinical care. We've heard a lot about digital data, so the robot will be used during medical rounds, doctors' visits, and in the second study, we will use the robot as a digital assistant. The purpose is not to replace human beings, but to assist them, because sometimes healthcare professionals simply cannot give more because they are so overburdened. So I will show you now how the robot can be engaged in a hospital environment. Frida, what will you be doing within our project? I will ask them how they feel and try to determine what problems they have. I will try to respond to their questions. I will help some to perform breathing exercises. When are you starting? I am getting used to slowly. I will start working next year. So this was a short presentation of what she can provide. The stress is on artificial intelligence for communication with patients. It is in Slovene as well. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Mlakar. This was very fast. I took part in an event of the European Space Agency where Frida still was not able to speak Slovene. Before the break, let us continue with 2 presentations of foreign participants. First will be Christian Theil Lundgaard, Head of Global Digital Health Partnership at Novo Nordisk, presenting the improved health outcomes using smart insulin pens.
At Novo Nordisk, we're developing digital innovations to change how people manage diabetes. The daily burden of diabetes disease management is high, so high that people can feel frustrated and overwhelmed. On average, people with diabetes spend 1 hour a day on self-care and only achieve normal blood sugar range for half of the day. Globally, over 30.2 million people with type 2 diabetes take insulin daily, while someone living with type 1 diabetes will take around 65,000 injections in their lifetime, and each time they're meant to write it down for their doctor or nurse. At Novo Nordisk, we want to reduce some of this daily burden, so we're developing new digital solutions, beginning with smart insulin pens. The pens record how much insulin people take and when they take it, and can transfer this data to existing apps and devices that people with diabetes, doctors, and nurses are already using to manage the condition. So instead of making medical decisions based on manually recorded information, or none at all, doctors and nurses can know precisely how patients have been taking their insulin, leading to more personalized, productive conversations about diabetes management. A real-world evidence study in Sweden has already shown that use of a smart pen gives people with diabetes up to an extra 2 hours of time in normal blood glucose range, equal to a full month out of the year, meaning their blood sugar stays within normal levels for longer each day. For people with diabetes, good glucose control can help lower the frequency of microvascular complications. Patients using the pen also had a 43% decrease in the average number of missed or forgotten mealtime or bolus insulin doses. In this new era of digital health, smart pens can free the burden of having to record dosing data manually, as well as helping people talk about their health in a more productive and meaningful way. Together, this can ultimately lead to better decisions, better health, and better lives.
In Novo Nordisk, we are providing medication to millions of people living with diabetes, obesity, and other serious chronic diseases. And while we're providing state-of-the-art medication to these people, we can see that they're still struggling in their daily lives with managing their disease. That's why we're also developing a number of digital solutions, both on our own and in collaboration with other companies, to help people in their daily lives with managing the disease by getting support from these digital solutions. When we developed our strategy and decided on what solutions we wanted to bring to these patients, we of course interviewed a lot of people with chronic diseases in order to understand what their struggles and what their needs are. I want to show you a small video of people living with type 2 diabetes to provide a bit of insight into what challenges they are facing in their daily lives trying to manage this disease.
It's not an exact science. It would be easier if it was. Like, if you do this, you get this result all the time. But it's not. Some days will be perfect, and then some days you're too low or too high, and you're like, why? Herein lies the mystery.
I was having trouble controlling the blood sugar for a little while, and I couldn't figure out why. Because I didn't change anything. I was eating the same as I always was.
Min diabetes meget ustabil. Den svinger rigtig meget. Mit blodsukker er ikke blevet art, så det har været højt. Og jeg tager tonsvis af insulin, og det gør jeg stadigvæk.
The class that they give you for the food, the nutrition, it's like you're speaking a different language to me. It just flew over my head, and when I don't understand something, that really makes me not pay it any attention.
So I eat fried foods, I eat hamburgers, and I love candy and junk. So I know what the problem is, I just gotta fix it.
There's so much you gotta just constantly have to keep thinking about.
Jeg er ikke helt utryg, men jeg er heller ikke helt 100% sikker på, hvad det er, jeg gør.
I don't have time to be a diabetic. Damn, I skipped breakfast. I gotta get in my car now, and God knows, you know, if I'm gonna have time to eat, what's gonna be there or anything.
Det er svært at tilrettelægge, hvornår du skal tage medicin. Jeg har selvfølgelig alarmerne lagt ind på min telefon, at nu skal jeg have det. Men så sker der et eller andet, og så kommer jeg ikke til at spise før kl. 8 eller 9.
I had breast cancer when I was 34, so that's 19 years ago. That was hard, but given the choice, if I had to go through that or have diabetes, I would go through that again.
Hearing from these people living with type 2 diabetes, it's clear that they need more than just good medication in order to actually be able to manage their disease on a day-to-day basis. That's why we have started our digital health initiative here in Novo Nordisk, where we are both on our own and in collaboration with other companies are bringing solutions to these people in order to reduce the barrier of living with the disease on a day-to-day basis and to help optimize the treatment that our medication provides. I've brought yet another small video that provides an example of what it is that we are doing with digital health here in Novo Nordisk. We are bringing these solutions to people living with serious chronic disease in order to help them improve their lives, in order to help their physicians get better insight into how the patients are actually managing their disease, and also in order to provide benefits to society at large. We're looking very much forward to bringing even more digital innovation to the market over the coming years. Thank you for listening.
To je bila torej predstavitev Novo Nordiska in magister Christian
Novo Nordisk by Christian Theil Lundgaard. Prior to the coffee break, a presentation by the founder of the massvaccines.net platform. Can you hear us?
You will talk with us about a joint European vaccination card. So the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you very much. Do you see my screen? Okay, it's okay?
It's okay. Just go on.
Okay, thank you. So I will now present the result of our work on the digital vaccination card. Now first, what is vaccination card? A digital vaccination, vaccination card is a document that gathers reliable information about vaccine administration, which is portable and that is in the custody of the regarded person. And a vaccination card is not a personal log of received vaccines, or a health professional information system, a public health information system, in particular an immunization information system, or a platform for on-demand retrieval of foreign patient summaries like EHDSI. So a digital vaccination card should consist of a commonly agreed portable format protocols to store, retrieve, exchange, update documents under this format, organizations to accredit health professionals to feed these documents, and for the portable formats and protocols, the syntax could rely upon usual HL7 standards like CDA and FHIR. A common code system has to be adopted for vaccines, and the QR code technology, which can store up to 100 vaccine acts. So this is an example of paper trace. So to feed the digital vaccination card, we need to integrate, vaccine paper records across Europe in different languages, like this paper vaccination card from Greece, with commercial, active or inactive or generic vaccine names. Another difficulty is to take into account the diversity of existing vaccine codes, product codes, or other codes, such as the ATC code, which is represented in this map. The transition towards a European digital vaccination card will require the integration of legacy data, either digital or from paper cards. The representation of this information is today heterogeneous, and it would belong to the EU to provide common referential vaccines designations, allowing to transcode any of the many code systems used today to represent administered vaccines or to assist in the input of paper trace, whatever their representation, exact or approximate brand names, vaccines, or target diseases. So the harmonized administration events will then receive the unique serial number, be gathered into a structured document, digital document that will be signed with an authorized certificate. The citizen keeps the free choice of exposing or not his vaccination card as web resources to share it more easily with health professionals. It is their choice. They select the compliant servers that will expose it. It could be one in his home country and one in his residence country, for example, and manages directly the grants of rights to other persons, such as family members, health professionals, or accredited verifiers. So here we have a scheme. We do not need any prior assumption about the number and the suppliers of the repositories for activated vaccination cards. They could be provided by states, regions, employers, insurance companies, or self-hosted within personal clouds. Similarly, all kinds of renderers could be proposed to different audiences, frequently embedded into applications with a large scope, such as a general e-health records application for health professionals. So the only thing that must be guaranteed is that they respect a common interoperability framework to expose and visualize the web resources representing the vaccination cards. We have built a decision support system to interpret the vaccination history exposed in compliance with this interoperability framework. About responsibilities, and this is the last slide, all the building blocks for achieving this in a short time frame are already available. The HL7 formats and protocols, CDA and FHIR, are well known. The QR code representation used for the COVID certificate can be transposed quite easily. The digital signature gateway can also be reused. We developed a comprehensive terminology which is already aligned with many code systems that could serve as a basis for an EU referential managed by, for example, the ECDC. And each member state already had to address serialization and accreditation of health professionals for the purpose of delivering the COVID certificates. Even without working with the same emergency as was done for the COVID-19 certificate, a full solution could be available and deployed by several member states for a very limited cost in less than 2 years. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Mr. Cook, for this great idea. And let us see if we succeed in doing it. So thank you very much, and we wish you a nice remaining of the day.
Thus, we have come to the end of the first part of this conference. Before the grand finale, we'll take a coffee break. We'll also listen to representatives of patients regarding the aspects of digitization. A short break for coffee, 15 minutes, and then conclude. Is it okay? A brief coffee break.
We were born to end patient suffering, to extend life and improve its quality. That's why in the 70s, when infectious diseases passed from person to person, we didn't rest. In the 80s, when a needle and syringe was the only option for insulin injection, we didn't rest. In the 90s, when contracting HIV was a death sentence, we didn't rest. In the 2000s, when killing cancer cells damaged healthy cells too, we didn't rest. And right now, after decades of tireless medical innovation, we still won't rest. Until new treatments stop Alzheimer's disease in its tracks and gene therapies relieve or even cure hemophilia B. Until combination therapies keep lung cancer under control and blood cancer patients leave behind a lifetime of treatment. Until antibacterial monoclonal antibodies slow antibiotic resistance and no one suffers or dies from a vaccine-preventable disease. Until everyone can live a longer and healthier life, we won't rest.
Tako, to je bil predstavitveni film, potem nadaljujemo z opravičilom. Zdaj, če se vam je zdelo pri predstavitvi Novo Nordijska, da ste predstavitveni film videli dvakrat, potem ste dobro videli.
Listened to Novo Nordisk, that you saw or watched the same video twice, that was a mistake. Now, after the conference, you are all invited to the hall in front where you can continue networking and having some refreshments. In the last section, we'll focus on how to best prepare for the future and the voice of patients and their view on digitalization of health. So how to best prepare for the future? Obviously, what is ahead of us is the morning of the digital transformation of Slovenian healthcare. So this is the title of the next presentation by Mr. Gregor Cuzak, the co-creator and co-organizer of healthday.se. First, I would like to say that I organize many events, but I've never been in such an eminent audience as here, so I know almost half of you, and I'm pleased that through the healthday.is we work together and that we know that the results are here. So my intention here today is what we can concretely do, not what the health policy is, what the ministry does, and what our important institutions do, what is the smallest step that we can take and that it has some effect and that it builds something. So we are building a new value always. why this wolf here? I'll tell you later. Then when in a natural park in a Yellowstone in 1995, after 70 years, herd of wolves was back, and how the whole ecosystem can change, and also the flow of rivers can change, and how this can happen is shown in this video, and I'll tell you also later why this can happen. So what's the current situation? What the ongoing measures are? So we have islands of excellence, the growing waiting list, a strong rise in the parallel healthcare system, investment in private healthcare are growing, and we can't say that there is no private healthcare in place. We can also talk about a staff turnover, which is the biggest danger. So when people leave, the institutions remain empty. Then we talk about the retirement of a baby boom generation. So more than 30% of people will retire, but sustainability, the financial stability will have to be maintained. So take care of chronic disease after the age of 65 is the highest burden. Then ongoing measures, recovery and resilience plan, measures of the Strategic Council for Digitalization. We have also a proposal published in June on the law on investments in healthcare, and we also have a healthcare digitization group at the Health Insurance Institute of Slovenia. Where are we really good? We're the best in the world in infant survival. If you look at WHO, and you will see Estonia and other countries that we have almost better, then we know that how important children are. So we need to take care of the elderly as well, of course. But first, the children. Dr. Battaglino, unfortunately, on the basis of my personal experience, I know what Dr. Battaglino does. So this is the treatment of type 1 diabetes for children. The distance from our home to the doctor is also the shortest in Slovenia compared to the EU average. And so we can't actually wish for this system to collapse. Then the latest therapies are available, including CAR-T, new Series N, and others, because we really take care of those that are important for us. We have a strong potential. We are number 2 in Europe in terms of exports per capita in the EU. So we have also extremely high potential for such medicines. And another Slovenian characteristics, because we are so small, we need to be able to master so many things. So I'm a physicist, and I would like to thank the ministry that what I talked half a year ago, now it is there. So we have kinetic energy. So we have funds, but we also need measures. Mr. Tushar mentioned that 1% of expenditure in healthcare, a very detailed analysis by the Association of Health Institutions. So I heard that we need 10 years for that, but we need political stability for that. So what has happened to the wolf? When it is brought to the Yellowstone, you also need a predator. You need to bring in a very dangerous animal, not many. So once the wolf is there, the deer moves from the valleys to the forests. When the deer stops eating young trees, forestation is higher. Various small animals arrive that previously had no opportunity for living safely. And also, if a river before could erode the bank, now, because of the new plants, the banks of the rivers reinforce and the flow of the river changes. So what do we have to do? The data is what needs to be taken into account. We have heard today that less than 20% of the data is actually collected in CRPP, but we are better in many fields than many European countries. Dr. Mitja Kos from the Faculty of Pharmacy recently managed to create a basis for the National Institute of Public Health, and we know that the database comprises a lot of clinical data. I know that the COVID-19 tracker is not designed in the best way, but it is important. So we need some cooperation, systemic cooperation. We all earn money vertically, not horizontally. Horizontally means cooperation through various industries. So I would like to thank PharmaForum and the organizers today that you actually act horizontally through the different industries. I won't speak about the different stakeholders. What is important is that we actually have to strengthen our forces. Tine, where are you? The other day at the conference of Delo, he said, we don't need much. We don't need much. We only need to connect different elements. So from the thoughts to words to action. So we need a story that connects truly good things. So we need perseverance. Dr. Rosman was here today, but now he is gone. So 18 ministries in 30 years at the Ministry of Health. So we can't afford that each time the ministers have to learn things all over again. So let's meet this objective. This year, I think it's reasonable that with 2 million people and not video conferences, what we need is serious examples. And if we wait for a system that will cover everything, it is like it is the same as if we want to create a forest from nothing. So we need projects that are active. Maybe they need the wolf that I mentioned earlier. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Another important aspect will be touched upon, the advantages of digitization and data exchange for patients. I hope Maja Južnic-Sotlar is with us online, Vice President of Europa Colon Slovenia. She was my student mate, a journalist. So present your aspect, speaking from patient's perspective, to whom all these topics are intended. Thank you very much, Igor, for reminding me of our students' years. Hello and welcome on behalf of the Europa Colon Slovenia Association, which represents patients with gastrointestinal cancer. I would like to thank the organizers for the invitation, especially for the opportunity to give patient representatives the opportunity to give their views on these important areas such as digitization and healthcare. We talk more and more about digitization, and it is no longer a real question whether we want or need it, but what should we do to get the most out of it as a society? Digitization in healthcare is taking place, whether we like it or not, whether we understand it or not, and whether we are afraid of it or not. If ever, then in the last year and a half, we have been able to get to know some of its elements, such as telemedicine, and find that it can serve us just fine, although personal contact still cannot be replaced. We can also find that with the help of digital technology, we can communicate very well, remotely talk, and exchange knowledge, for example, with the help of the Zoom and similar platforms. And if I go a little bit further, I see a great advantage of the digitization process in the fact that, at least I hope so, the information systems of various health institutions across the country will finally be unified or harmonized, which will greatly facilitate the work of doctors and patients. It is still the case now that even in some individual hospitals there are several different and incompatible systems, which makes data capture and transfer very difficult when patients are treated in different wards of the same hospital. Another benefit of digitization comes from the fact that it will make it easier to share data, even at the level of so-called real-world data, which is data from the real life, which we have somehow neglected so far, but are even more important because they can only be generated by patients based on their own treatment experience, and are particularly important for several reasons. They make a significant contribution to both improving the existing treatment options and developing the new ones. Here we also touch upon the current personalization in treatment, which is the direction of the future. But I can happily tell you that we are already living it today. All of these are just some of the advantages or benefits I can briefly list as someone who specializes in healthcare at the level of the patient advocacy, as well as a user of the healthcare. I started to use this system before I was born, and I'm really glad that Gregor Cuzak also stressed this, that we namely have a good system. There are many good properties of the system, but we rarely expose this. I cannot avoid two further questions, namely, where do I see issues, and what is the role of patients' organizations? It seems to me that from the patient's point of view, one of the major problems with digitization is, in particular, insufficient knowledge or understanding of what digitization is and what solutions it really offers, and the resulting fear or resistance even. When the word digitization is mentioned, patients often freeze because they believe that this will mean or require certain knowledge from them, or that they will have to know complex hardware and computer technology, which is of course not true. The essence of digitization is to offer, above all, practical solutions that will simplify the lives of all patients, no matter how good or bad their knowledge of the use of modern technologies is. As an example, let me once again point out the previously mentioned unification of information systems of all healthcare institutions at the national level, which would mean a much easier transition to each patient from one institution to another. Another example, I would like to re-emphasize the importance of the unification of IT systems of different institutions. So this will facilitate easier transition of patients from one institution to another. And when patients feel that the use of the healthcare system and its services is facilitated, it is very likely that the reluctance to digitize would dissolve faster and easier. And speaking of the role and the tasks of societies, I am sure that one of the greatest tasks is education. First of all, we need to educate ourselves, to first explain the benefits of digitization to ourselves and learn about them well. And in the next step, we need to teach our members about these topics and also encourage them to use at least certain segments. For example, e-ordering and the use of different portals. I am also highlighting the issue of safety, security when it comes to sharing such sensitive information as health data. The latter is particularly important as we can see on a daily basis how much public confidence in social structures has been undermined. And these social structures have traditionally enjoyed high reputation. I would like to thank you once again for the invitation and your attention. Thank you, Maya.
So before the concluding thoughts of the organ of your host, something about what Maya said. In these days, months and years, a lot has happened in the area of data management, and currently the Data Governance Act has been discussed, and the member states have agreed on the negotiating mandate in order to ensure so strong foundations for its implementation to increase the confidence in data sharing services. So things are close to the materialization. Probably next year it will happen. And we have also heard today about the European health data space today, which is already facilitating the cooperation. As always in Slovenia, women have the last word, and I invite Ms. Barbara Stegel, Secretary General of the Forum of International Research and Development Pharmaceutical Companies. So the best remains to me. I would like to thank you all who have managed to come here and were able to participate offline, as well as all who attended the conference virtually. So I would like to thank all the speakers who have highlighted the value of innovation from their specific angles and about the future, which will definitely be innovative, digital, and connected. Innovation is where our wishes, our imagination meet, as well as our willingness and possibilities to materialize them. What seemed impossible yesterday is the reality today. We have our Frida here, and something that we can't imagine today will be taken for granted tomorrow. So in the first half of the 19th century, our romantic poet, Franz Schirn, looked forward to the railway construction. The Iron Road is coming. I'm looking forward to it, my love. I'll fly like a bird from Ljubljana to other towns. The message from the past tell us that the development advantages could be capitalized by those societies who manage to adopt innovation in time and put them into practice. But each innovation has to pass a test of establishing a consensus. Why are we open to some innovation and we reject the other? How can the scientific innovation be introduced to the public? How we hold a dialogue regarding their development and implementation? All these are the questions that we need to address or over again. So digital tools are in itself innovative, and they can help us assess, evaluate, and approach other innovation to potential users. Because of them, we are looking forward to the future today, the future of healthcare. So we expect it to be close to our homes and will be tailored to each individual at the level of the system. Digitalization can provide key arguments in the form of clear information and volumes of data to decide what investments will make in what innovation and so on. So also everything didn't go smoothly with the Iron Road. So the beautiful Slovenian girl actually hold a dialogue as a friendly quarrel. And the poet said at the end that he will take his wife to Vienna, Graz, or Trieste on this railway. And let's conclude optimistically so that the human mind and wisdom will be those that will estimate, evaluate, and approach the innovation to all of us. Thanks once again, and see you next year.